Okay, cool. So we're going to start off with this, talking about what is accounting theory, what is a theory altogether in the first place. And most of the time as accountants we go, oh, numbers are like real stuff and the word stuff is theory. And that's not really such a good sort of definition of theory. So I want to talk about what is a theory really in an academic, scientific sense. And I want to talk about how do we structure these theories and why this is important for accounting, like how do we actually use these in the real world. So the first thing is, what is a theory? Now, if you read the first page of Deegan's textbook, he'll start talking about how there are many definitions of theories, right? Theories don't just reside in libraries waiting for academics to dust them down, and instead theories are actually used wherever people are thinking about something and trying to structure it in some different way. One of the most famous and probably the best definition of a theory is a theory is a logical, structured way of thinking about an area that can be used to say something about something in the future. Okay? So a theory must be logical, structured. I'm going to put in quotes here, proven. I'm going to cross it out even because proof is really, really dead set hard. I'm going to write instead evidenced. Yep. To 100% prove something is nigh on impossible, but you can provide tons of evidence that it seems to work, right? What I'm trying to point out here is that a theory is not any one of the following. It's not a guess. It's not a hunch. It's not some sort of hypothesis. It's not speculation. It's not something random out there. So, you hear a lot of people, they say, oh, I got this theory that if I talk to girls in a certain way, she'll like me, right? Okay, that's not a theory. That's just garbage, right? That's just you coming up with some random, unstructured idea without proof, right? Or people will say, I've got this theory that if this happens, house prices will go up, so it's definitely a good investment, right? Well, unless you can actually prove it, unless you can put some evidence, unless you can sort of use that to make other decisions in the future as well, then it's not a theory, okay? It's just an unstructured idea. So when we're talking about theories, we're talking about something much more solid. Theories need to be a framework. They must be structured. They must be a framework to base or on which you can base other ideas or decisions. Yep. Now that evidence can be both quantitative, numbers, or it can be qualitative, it can be words, but whatever, you're going to have to come up with some method of proof, some method of evidence, all right? Now, it's good to have these things, but you don't necessarily need them, right? So I'm going to write good to have, but theories do not require the following things, right? Theories don't have to be particularly useful for them to be true. A theory can be bang on accurate, but what do you really do with it, right? So for example, at the moment we have mathematical theories that seem to mathematically work, but we don't know what to do with them. Or I could tell you theories about how the origin of the universe, how stars form. Is it going to be useful in your life? No. Does that mean that it's wrong? No. It can be absolutely true, but not necessarily applied, right? It doesn't have to say whether something is good or bad. Say if X is good or bad. In other words, it doesn't have to be moral. It's sometimes very useful to have theories that provide you with a moral guidance. For example, we don't want people to lie, cheat, and steal. So if we're going to write some laws to stop people from lying, cheating, and steal, then we do actually want them based on some sort of moral code, right? So shareholders don't get ripped off, right? But that doesn't mean to say that if you have a theory that is just scientifically true, but it doesn't give you a moral guide, that doesn't mean to say that that is a bad theory either, all right? So it's useful to have, but not required. Theories don't have to explain everything. They can be narrow in scope and still true. They don't have to fit with the orthodoxy. Do you know what I mean by orthodox?
Yeah, religion-based.
There are religions like Greek Orthodox or Russian Orthodox. That's not what I mean. Orthodox just means traditional. Conservative or traditional or generally accepted, right? So you can have a bang-out crazy theory and it does not fit in with all the other ideas that have come before, but that doesn't mean to say that your new crazy idea is really crazy. It might be actually true despite the fact that it contradicts all the previous evidence before it, right? So it's generally good if your theories do fit into some other structure, but just because it doesn't mean to say that it's necessarily bad either. It doesn't have to explain an exact situation, explain the exact. Sometimes tendency is enough, and it doesn't have to be terribly realistic. Let me give you a good example of a non-realistic but actually quite good theory: supply and demand. All right? Seriously, no person in their head walks around with a supply and demand graph, trying to calculate quantities and the optimal price. It just freaking happens, right? I want a can of Coke, I'm willing to pay $3 for it, I'll buy it, right? That I don't have a supply and demand curve inside my head when I go and buy Coca-Cola, all right? But even though this little graph that we get you to draw in economics, yeah, it's not at all realistic, it still seems to be fairly good in terms of predicting the future as well. So we still use it. Does that make sense? All right? So these are nice things for theories to have, but they're not necessarily required. Now, in theory, when you're trying to ever prove your ideas and convince somebody, right, you need to be able to use good critical thinking. And generally, good critical thinking is going to be clear rather than muddled. It's going to be precise with words, with your words. All right, you want to be accurate, you want to be consistent, you want to be logical, you want to be fair, and most importantly, you want to be objective. All right? The opposite to this, of course, of not being clear is being completely muddled. It's not, I don't know what you're trying to tell me. Precise with words or accurate with words, you're using these weasel words that don't necessarily tell me anything in particular. I'll give you a very good example of something that's actually very confusing in accounting. I'm going to mark this to the market value. Well, bloody hell, which market? Supply market, market to buy, market to sell. These prices are not the same thing. Are you going to junk it or are you going to sell it on the open market as a used item? Depends, all right? It really depends. So when people say fair value, that can mean a lot of things, all right? And that's sometimes used to obfuscate or lie, to confuse people, right? You certainly don't want to be inconsistent, you don't want to be irrational, you don't want to be biased, and you don't want to be subjective as much as you possibly can. Cool. So we've been through what is a theory and what makes a good theory, right? Let's now talk about the types of theories. I'm going to talk about this and then I'm going to stop because we're going to run out of time, right? So there are really two major types of theories that we're going to look at this semester. The first type of theory is called a positive theory and a normative theory. Positive and theory. So theories can generally do usually one of two things, right? And by theories, I'm talking about like theories that are academically put through the rigorous, methods, when you're trying to prove something is true for sure, right? A positive theory is going to try and explain and predict. Explain phenomena. It's going to explain something that happens, and it will try and predict and happen. All right, a normative theory is going to tell you what is good or bad in a circumstance, and therefore what you should do. I'm going to put should in capital words. Yep. These are the two things that you must remember this week. You must not forget them, all right? Positive and normative. Not positive and negative, positive and normative, okay? So, as a general rule, right, the positive theories are more scientific. These ones here are more useful in a humanities type environment, okay? Let me give you an example. Directors have been known to lie, cheat and steal sometimes. They are likely to bias the profit up and take a higher bonus sometimes in certain circumstances. A positivist, a scientist, somebody who just wants to understand human behaviour will go, I have noticed this pattern of where directors steal money or they bias the profit figure so that they can give themselves a bigger bonus than they deserve, right? And in that case, I can predict that under these circumstances, like for example when they're facing very high debt levels, all right, that a person is likely to lie in this circumstance. All right, they're likely to overstate the profits, right? They are not trying to tell you whether it's a good or bad thing. They just want to understand the science of why people lie, cheat, and steal. Yeah? A normative accountant or normative theorist would look at this and go like, lying, cheating, and stealing is pretty darn sucky. We should stop it. It's bad, right? So you're starting off with this moral position of saying, X is bad, we should stop it. Therefore, let us go and find some sort of structured framework, some logical way to stop the lying. Does that make sense? Okay. So there are two ways of looking at any theory. And some people in the normative camp will look at positive theories and they'll go like, well, those are bloody useless. And the people in the positive camp will go, well, of course they're useless. They're just scientific. What you decide to do with the science is up to you. Yeah? So we're going to look at a whole bunch of theories over this semester. We're going to look at the way people bias profit. We're going to look at what the stock market movement means about whether accounting was any good or not. All right? We're going to look at the agency relationship between shareholders and directors and how people play games and how they price things throughout the semester. Okay? I'm going to stop right here. We're only part way through the lecture. We're only into logic. God, I can't spell. All right, we're only part way into the types of theories. We'll come back into the tutorial on parts of logic, reasoning, and measurement, and I will see you guys either, in 10 minutes up there, or I will see some people in the tutorial on Thursday tomorrow. Okay, thank you very much.